broadcasting is a very wild industry, and it continues to get more and more wild, is the phrase I will use. Uh, Radio jobs are getting eliminated. I kind of knew that was happening 10 years ago when I started getting into this field. Now it's becoming more and more predominant. Um, have fun with what you're doing. If you are dissatisfied with where you're at, ask questions. Think of different ways to continue your career. If you find broadcasting happy with where you're at, kick butt. Have a good time.
Hi again, and welcome into episode 8 of STAA's Next Level Sportscasting. I'm your host, Michael Watring, and we're joined by the president of the ECHL's Bloomington Bison, Andy Zilch. Andy, really appreciate you taking some time. We're looking forward to having this conversation, but I do want to start. You were a broadcaster for a very long time. What went into the decision to hang up the headset?
Well, it was an offer of a life goal that I couldn't turn down. I had a different avenue that I started crafting mentally for myself. Kind of once COVID made the turn. There were a few things that fell into place where I was like, all right, I need to think of something different to do with my life should an NHL job not pan out. And as I kept going along, and I mean, even throughout my career, I was always asking questions. Always trying to learn more, whether that be through an equipment guy, a trainer, president of a team, another president, a ticket rep, a corporate sales partnership person. I was always asking. And I thought that I always had a good knack for leading people and trying to figure out solutions to problems. So when I applied for this job with the Bloomington Bison, I made it very apparent that I didn't want to be simply a broadcaster and a media relations manager. And I expressed interest in sitting at the big table and helping make decisions of a new team. That was very appealing to me. And after the first year, ownership thought it would be a good idea to present this opportunity with me. And to go, a lot of people joke to go from broadcaster to president isn't a quick step. And for someone to have that kind of faith in me was an offer I couldn't turn down.
You recently just hired this role, and that's what this conversation is going to circle around. But I want to look at the position description first and foremost. How did you go about crafting that, and why were there so many specific areas that you really wanted to look for?
Yeah, and it's funny because our new broadcaster now, he asked me, now that he's here, boots are in ground, and he wanted to know, what was appealing for me to him, and I was flat out honest with him. What I was looking for, and to young men and women that are watching this, it's not always about the best call. That was actually something that was ancillary in this role. There was so many different factors and things that I was looking for. And when you're submitting an application to someone, they're not, first of all, there's no time for a hiring manager to read all 90 resumes, applications, demo tapes, and all their materials. So you got to start eliminating people off the get-go. And I mean, there was people who I eliminated right away who didn't even have much of a cover letter. It was, I'm interested in this position. Here's my demo. So, I mean, put some more effort in. If this is your dream job, I would certainly hope that you would put a little bit more effort into chasing your dream. So, to me, that showed not strong interest. What I was specifically looking for, I'm a firm believer of people rising through the ranks. So, I looked at the levels below us. I wanted to see that kind of experience already. The ECHL has changed dramatically since I've been in it in 2012. And this league has taken leaps and bounds of steps further from a decade and some change of when I was here last. So this to me is a league now that you can't just come out of college and jump right into this role. And the person who I hired for this had experience in the SPHL for 2 years and thrived in that role. And then all the other stuff fell into place. Good call, good media relations managerial experience. Had sales background, which was a bonus. I wasn't looking for it, but it was a bonus. Good writer, and above all, a good person. In my interviews, I was calling to see just what kind of people I was talking to. How would they gel with our front office staff? Sometimes, again, you can have the best call. You can be a dynamite media relations manager, But if you're not a person who meshes well with what we have in place here already, it just might not work out. And that's not you're not a bad person or a bad employee or a bad broadcaster. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but I'll start with maybe one of the first things that you mentioned. It was a short application period, only about 5 days. Why, or I guess the better question is how do you go through sorting through all the applications that you get? How much time do you truly spend on each application as you go through to shortening the list down?
I uncovered all the stones in terms of who was applying. I know I looked at all the names. I looked at their background, and the way teamwork and actually we should. I wonder if I should share. I no, I shouldn't share a screen because it shows who applied and whatnot. But for those of you that are applying on teamwork, it'll show your name, your picture if it's on there, which I strongly suggest you put a picture on there. It just shows effort. Back to my point about writing a cover letter. If you have that blank silhouette image, to me that shows you didn't put effort in your teamwork online profile. I don't care what you look like; it just shows effort. And then on top of that, it shows your past two work experiences. So I looked at every person's experience and I was looking for leagues in pro hockey. There were some college people that I were entertaining as well that had internships with minor league hockey teams or junior hockey teams. So those were the things that I was looking for right off the hop. And then you mentioned the short window. I remember when I was applying for every job that I've applied for in my life. I don't care if I was going to Clearwater, Florida on vacation, or I was going to Lake Ozark for a weekend. My laptop was always with me because if my dream job opened up on a Friday at 5 p.m., I was applying at Friday at 5:01 p.m. And I
Make,
felt my candidate should be doing that as well.
yeah, that
Yep.
makes sense.
Yep.
I want to talk about the cover letter because you mentioned that, and
Yeah.
I think that at least in my experience, there can be times where I'm like, I have so many things that I want to say, and I think of all these paragraphs that I want to write. What did you notice specifically about all the cover letters that you saw that you liked?
Yeah, I used to rack my brain around a cover letter and I spent too much time on it, I feel. Uh, don't like, oh my gosh, like I remember like I'd be like, this sentence should go here and then flip this and no, now this reads good. Don't spend so much time on that. Like you're just gonna put your head against the wall almost. I looked for people who paid attention to the application, especially the job details that I instructed in the application, and reflected that in their cover letter. I wasn't looking for Mark Twain to write a great cover letter. I was looking for somebody who didn't do the whole copy paste. There's my cover letter that I've done for 7 other teams that I've applied for this summer. I looked for somebody who said, based upon your job description, I can do XYZ. I would strongly suggest tailoring a cover letter. You don't have to go overboard, but tailor every cover letter to that specific job that you're applying for.
Outside of copy paste, outside of length, any other negatives that you saw in cover letters?
Um, again, like the short and sweet one was too short and sweet. Uh, I didn't examine cover letters overly aggressive. I just looked to see who cared to take the time, and then I really didn't analyze it much more further. So I think that would probably be about it. Just put some time and effort into it, and you're going to be golden.
You did mention that the reel isn't necessarily as important. That was ancillary to this, but
Mhm.
obviously everybody puts together a reel. Uh, Give me an example of what you like to see from a demo reel, having sat in that chair, putting together your own, and now in the hiring process.
Yeah, I think it's kind of fun, and there's no magic wand. What I might say might be completely different from another hiring manager or a television producer, but I always feel it's strong and it's tough, especially if you're in college, but I feel like nowadays you have the capability, you have the technology to show me who you are and how you deliver yourself on camera. So I think a title screen is very appropriate. Oh, also, quick YouTube link. If I have to go somewhere and enter a password, or if I have to go download something, you're making an extra step for the hiring manager that might just say, I think I'm just going to not go through this extra step because I have 90 other candidates to look for. So, quick YouTube link, have it clickable, and I can go right to it. I would suggest a title screen of what I'm about to get into, and then either your headshot in that title screen or that very first screen that you have, something of your face delivering a stand up, so I know who I'm looking at now and who's delivering what.
How much time do you spend on a demo reel?
I actually took a different angle here, and it might be different for teams across, but my first focal point was, like I said, the experience, the background, and I whittled it down to a certain bucket after examining that. Then I looked at their writing skill set and their media relations background, because for this job, you're a media relations manager first, and you have the luxury of broadcasting games. That was preached to me when I was very early in my career, so I wanted to implement that here in Bloomington. So my next step in the process was figuring out who could handle the bulk of the role here. Then I narrowed the candidate list down even further. Then I started listening to tapes. So there was some guys and women who would submit stuff that it took a long time. I would suggest you got to get the listener's attention right away. It took a long time to get to something entertaining. Uh, so I didn't hold anybody accountable for that, but just a word of advice, because there are some people that might be like, why am I listening to this for a minute and a half and we're on the penalty kill here for another 2 minutes? Get a power play going right away, get an end of a game, it's a tie game, get an overtime, get something that's going to get me locked in right away. Even a highlight reel clip. I would always start all my audio demos with highlight reels. First minute, there's at least 5 goals, 3 saves, a big hit, and a fight. That's going to get somebody locked in on you right away.
That makes sense. Going back to the media relation aspect of things, I was an SID for 10 years and I joked with everybody. The SID part paid the bills. Broadcasting was a nice little cherry on top to be able to do
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
What specific areas in terms of skills do you want to see from somebody that is showcasing their media relations ability?
Honestly, it's just experience at that point. Um, and I, again, I'll continue to go through my step of the process because this helped. I got down to a very short list at that time, and then I called the candidates' bosses, and that's where I got more insight on how they were handling the day-to-day responsibilities, and what challenges have been given to them. That's when I started interviewing people as well. So, they would tell me their challenges, their experience, what they can overcome, what they've built up. And that was generally my gauging tool of how to process the candidates.
You did those Zoom interviews. What advice do you give somebody during a Zoom interview process?
Yeah, I'm old school. I'm an old soul. So dress for the job you want, not the one that you have. So like nowadays, I'm talking to you in a half zip right now, but generally I'm wearing a button down. Sometimes I'll wear a suit coat. Uh, I think for the Bison job, I actually wore a tie when I did my Zoom interview a year ago for them. So it just shows representation of yourself, of what you're trying to bring to the table. Also, with this being a broadcaster role, smile. Smiling helps. And when you do sales too, it also comes through. When you're on the phone, when you're on a call, if you're smiling, when you're broadcasting a game, people can tell that you're happy through your voice. They might not see you, but they can tell that you're happy. So that's another thing that I would also give as a good tip of advice when you're doing a Zoom interview.
Were there any questions that you asked to each individual candidate? Any really important questions that you really wanted to hear how they responded to it?
You know, I I like to see growth. I don't want to see somebody say, "Yeah, I'd be okay being in this job for the rest of my life," and that'd be cool. I want to know what gets people going. So I did ask the cheesiest question in the book, but what do you see yourself doing here in the future? Like, is there further steps for you? How can I help you get there if you get this job? That was one big thing. I also asked for someone to analyze the job description for me because I wanted to hear them say it's media relations first. And if somebody did say, "Oh, it's a broadcasting role, can't wait to call the games," but no one did. No one did when I interviewed them. So I was very impressed with that I was able to whittle down the candidates, to that mindset. But those would be some things I asked. I definitely asked just, about their lives. What do they like to do? Are they football fans? Are they basketball fans? So, do they cook? What do their free time look like? Because that was a part of the gelling process with our front office. And challenges that they've overcame in pro sports. You are dealing with personalities in the locker room. So I've asked candidates about challenges that they've had in their career, how they've overcame those challenges, whether it be in the locker room, in the front office. Those would be some big questions that I would ask.
What role does thank you notes play following up after the interview?
It can get you a job, in my opinion. So again, old school. That was something I was looking for from my candidates, is to acknowledge and appreciate the time for both of us, because that stuff goes a long way for me. If you're sending a thank you note, to me, you've done everything you can, and you can rest easy. I put myself out there. I sold myself as best I could. I can close the laptop and wait for Andy to respond, kind of thing.
One of the things that happens a lot, I think, in this industry is people might not hear back from an employer or they get turned down for a job and it starts to happen consistently and they start to get demoralized.
Yeah.
I've learned that there are a lot of extenuating circumstances for maybe why they hired somebody else or why you didn't get that job. What do you say to any of the applicants that might not get not just this role, but any of the roles that they apply for?
Yeah, I wish I could hire everybody that was, on my checklist, but, at the end of the day, it's one job. There's people who I've corresponded with that didn't get the job. They inquired why, and rightfully so. And, I laid it out for them. And, it wasn't anything that they did wrong. It just didn't work at this time. So, maybe this job opens up in another year. Maybe the candidate I just hired goes to the American Hockey League, and now this job's open again. Maybe I don't even have to open the job because I already know who the candidate is that I might want. So you never know what happens. And hockey is a small world. There's other jobs that could come open, and I could reach out to another ECHL team and be like, hey, I'm going to save you the trouble. I had a candidate who was, here's a few candidates that I was considering if you want to not even open it up because I just went through the dance. Here you go, kind of thing. So, stuff like that makes memories that, can be shared upon a very small and tight-knit community. So always act accordingly. I know it gets tough. I've been turned down by jobs before, and I've kept contact with those decision makers because they are so connected in the hockey world.
It was a short application process, but how do you want people to follow up on their applications? Is there a specific timeline, specific way to go about it to follow up on their applications after a window of time?
I wish that I could have had the time to talk to everybody. But broadcasting is a highly sought after position and media relations manager. I just didn't have the time to contact everybody that reached out to me. My desired process for this, we actually haven't gotten into this yet, Michael, was in my job description, I put that the teamwork application submission will only be submitted. Further outreach will not be considered, I think is how I phrase that. Just because I wanted to see who would follow those guidelines. And that did unfortunately eliminate a couple candidates because if you're not able to follow that path, how you starting off on a rocky foot, how can you follow a path in the direction in the front office? So I actually made that a small guideline just to see who would follow suit with that. And unfortunately, that did eliminate some people, but that was one thing that I was looking at.
So are you saying that they emailed you directly after they
Correct.
applied on Teamwork?
Yes, yes, yes.
Interesting. So if it is in there, it doesn't necessarily pay off to send you an email or follow up with a phone call if they cannot follow that specific instruction.
Correct. Yeah. And I did have people do that. There was some people that I was considering for the role, but I just thought, you know what, like I can't continue on with that in the process. So that was a rule. And it was in
Sir,
bolded letters at the very bottom. So
I'm sure many people will find that very fascinating. Certainly, having been a broadcaster, it very much helps in your knowledge of other broadcasters. Some may have
Mhm.
reached out to you in the past to try to get some critiques or feedback. But moving forward, do you think when this role opens up again in the future, you might have a short list in your head? Will you be monitoring other sportscasters, maybe throughout the league, or is this something that you hope just to start from scratch every single time?
I'll probably start from scratch every time. I mean, unless there's movement, unless there's a call up next year. But we'll see. You never know what happens in a 12-month calendar time span. But after 24 months, I think things change drastically. You'll have a whole herd of new candidates that could come in. Uh, so I would probably say I would start over from scratch unless it's a call up that occurs next summer.
A lot of the conversations that we've had lately on this specific show has been centered around agents. This might be a little bit too early for the majority of the candidates, if not all the candidates, to have an agent. But if someone did have an agent, or if somebody doesn't have an agent, is there any benefit to that when looking at this job opportunity?
You know, Not really. I did talk to John prior to the hire. He was the only one really, because I feel like he's got a great grasp of the people who were candidates for this role. So he was actually the only one in terms of agents that I really spoke with. So it really didn't help or hurt anybody. I wasn't like, "Ooh, this person has an agent. Let me talk to him." Everybody came from a clean slate when I was analyzing the role. So nothing helped or hurted anybody. And I had John as someone to confide with regarding this as well.
You mentioned earlier that there were some college students that had applied for this role and some younger people that had applied. What advice, what guidelines do you give somebody that's currently in college as they're trying to make that transition from college into the professional ranks for their career?
Yeah, I would say try to grab an internship. I did 4 years of internships in St. Louis, so it was a little bit more different for me because it's a big city. So you can't get that minor league experience. If you're interning with a minor league team, I'm not going to say it's a shoe-in, but it's certainly an unbelievable foot in the door because that's a perfect segue for you to move right into a role. They already know who you are. They know how you operate. They know how you follow instructions. They know how you can be coached. So I think if you were in a minor league city, that gives you a leg up. For me, it was actually more difficult. I had to do 4 years of unpaid internships, which, by the way, I think most interns are paid now. So congratulations, everyone. So I did 2 years with the St. Louis Rams, 2 years with the St. Louis Blues. And I got to a point, I never forget a phone call with one of my friends. I was like, I don't know how many times I can do these unpaid internships. Like, am I really going to do 5 years of unpaid internships? Well, I had someone take a flyer out on me, and I got the job in the ECHL with the Greenville Road Warriors, their name at the time. So my suggestion is try to get an internship. I feel like it's easier if you're in a minor league city. It's a little bit harder to get a job if you're in a bigger city trying to move to a new city. But that certainly helps on your resume because that was stuff that I looked at when I was considering teams, or sorry, and considering employees was the teams that they would work for previously.
I live in a unique area. I live in South Florida, and all of a sudden, Florida has become this huge built hockey with the Panthers and the Lightning, but there aren't college teams down in this area. A lot of the college students that come here don't have those chances except for maybe a club team here or there. How does that experience showcase itself on a resume compared to somebody that might go to a school like a Boston or Boston College that has a powerhouse program?
I've never measured that before. Experience is experience. Same thing with calling hockey games, baseball games, whatever. The game's the game. Boy, if I could get on a podium right now and get a megaphone, I would. I feel like broadcasters get so horse blinded they throw them on and they think, well, the projection of the talent means the projection of the talent on the microphone. That is the most untrue statement I've ever heard of, and it took me a long time to realize it. I thought NHL broadcasters were better than AHL broadcasters, AHL better than ECHL, and so forth and so on. Why? Because the talent on the ice is better? That does not dictate the talent of the front office employees. I know that there is better AHL broadcasters than NHL broadcasters right now. It's all subjective based. That's my opinion. Everyone can have their own opinion. But for more often than not, that is the matter of the case. There are some people in minor league sports that certainly deserve. They have earned it. They have a great call. And now I'm talking sports wide, but they just aren't in the show. They aren't in the big times. So don't get caught up with the level, the school you're at. BU's bigger than Florida Gulf Coast University. So what? You're calling the game. Have a good time with it. So what if they make a lot of errors?
Yeah, that's totally fair, and particularly down here with how much people love hockey, I think that it's only going to continue to grow in this area and throughout the rest of the country.
Yeah.
I want to chat about the man that you hired, Erik Konwinski.
Yes.
Anything specific before I ask maybe another question or two, but was there anything specific that rung a bell for you maybe during the cover letter, the application process, the interview, anything that really stuck out to you when you thought to yourself, this might be the guy?
I think it was just everything. I mean, the interview that I had with them, it was an enjoyable conversation. It wasn't even an interview. Like I had some really good conversations with people during this process. So that narrowed the field down. It was just the conversations that I had that felt natural. It wasn't forced. I wasn't like, what am I going to ask next? I generally came with a few questions that I was going to ask, and then I just had a talk with people. So it was natural with him. I liked his mindset. He's young, but he carries himself very mature. And the final nail in the coffin was when I called the president of his team. And it's a phrase that I'm probably going to say many times in my career, but I knew this call was coming. I hate that this is coming, but man, does he deserve it. It was something along those lines. And I almost wanted to say, that's all I needed to hear. Thanks for your 5 seconds, you know? So, that was the final nail in the coffin, I think, for him. But he's just an enjoyable person. He's a hard worker. He's the kind of guy who, I can already tell if the job's not done at 5, he's going to stay till 6:07 or whatever the case may be. So I think we got a really good one in Erik.
You mentioned, I think, very early that one of the questions that you did ask was, how can I help you get to that next level?
Yep.
What do you want to have, not just for Erik, but for other candidates moving forward? What kind of relationship do you want to have, understanding that their goals are the NHL, their goals are higher than this, but they have to remain focused in the role that they currently have with you in Bloomington?
Yeah, one of our staff members, because in assuming this role, I asked that question on some sort of basis along those lines, and one of our staff members kind of like was questioning how he should answer that, and I go, just answer the question. I'm not trying to corner you. And he said NHL. I go, good, because I knew that was your answer. Let's try to find a way to get there. And I would tell him examples of what we would see in the NHL. He's not from an NHL city, so I would say, look, for your role, this is what we need to do moving forward to create that standard. That way you're NHL ready. If an NHL team picks up the phone and says, what do you think about this guy? I'd say, well, he does this, this, and this. You guys do that and what you do in the NHL, I think he's ready. So just preparing them for the NHL mindset and even the AHL mindset, whatever the case may be. Again, rising up the ranks, not necessarily following the players' footsteps, as we talked about just a moment ago. But if that's what they feel they need to do, then so be it. I would love to help them succeed and go wherever they desire to and keep them ready for that.
I'll finish on this note. You made it high in the ranks of your career. There's a lot of people that make really good careers that might never get a chance to make it to the professional level.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to people that are either just starting out, currently in the field, waiting for that next opportunity, for them to define what success looks like as a broadcaster?
Man, that's a good question because I'll never forget a conversation I had with my dad. The Springfield Falcons got sold back in 2015, and I was already 4 years into this career, broadcasting professionally, two in the ECHL, two in the AHL, and I think I was 29 at the time, and I was like, gosh, I don't know what else to do with my life. What if I don't get a broadcasting job? And that was like a really tough discussion with my dad and my mom was there too, so we all talked about it. And it was just kind of like, well, let's hope you get another job after this team got sold. And that was not a good feeling. And even as we moved along, my aspirations, I've always been this way. I always want to get to the top of wherever I'm doing. And I touched it. I wasn't permanently there in the NHL, but I filled in for a couple games. I've done a couple periods. I've done TV games. I've done radio games. It was great. I haven't gotten an offer letter from an NHL team yet to be their main play-by-play voice. So let's be the top of a minor league franchise. Not only that, a brand new one that's 2.5 hours away from me. So that was my second avenue. I would set a goal for yourself, for those of you that are listening in. Don't beat yourself up if you don't get to that goal. Broadcasting is a very wild industry, and it continues to get more and more wild, is the phrase I will use. Radio jobs are getting eliminated. I kind of knew that was happening 10 years ago when I started getting into this field. Now it's becoming more and more predominant. Um, have fun with what you're doing. If you are dissatisfied with where you're at, ask questions. Think of different ways to continue your career. If you find broadcasting happy with where you're at, kick butt, have a good time. If you're not happy with where you're at, think of different avenues and different things that you can do. Still kick butt with what you're doing, but find other avenues to be successful in your mind of what you want to do. I guess that would probably be my best advice that I could give people.
It's great advice, and this has been very insightful. Andy, thanks so much for the time and best of luck this season.
Of course, thank you.
Our guest in episode 8 of STAA's Next Level Sportscasting has been Andy Zilch, the president of the ECHL's Bloomington Bison. I'm Michael Watrang. Thanks so much for watching this episode.